In the ruthless world of Hong Kong's triads, loyalty is currency and betrayal is a death sentence. This is the story of Fat Kai, a brilliant and ambitious gangster who dared to break the ultimate rule he turned on his own boss. He masterminded a brutal attack on the fearsome triad leader Tall Pao, hoping to seize power for himself. But in the underworld, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Fat Kai's bid for the throne ignited a bloody civil war within the Wo On Lok triad, setting him on a path of no return. In the sprawling neon-lit labyrinth of Hong Kong's underworld, a young man named Kwong-kai, known on the streets as Fat Kai, was making a name for himself. He was sharp with an ambition that burned hotter than the charcoal in the city's street-side food stalls. This fire caught the eye of Tall Pao, the formidable leader of the Wo On Lok triad. Tall Pao was an old-school boss, a man who commanded respect through a mixture of fear and tradition. He saw potential in Fat Kai's cunning and brought him into his inner circle, viewing the young man as a key piece in the future of his criminal empire. For a time, Fat Kai thrived under his mentor's guidance, learning the brutal calculus of power and profit that governed their world. He executed his duties flawlessly, proving he was not just another street tough, but a man with a mind for the game. His reputation for audacity was cemented when he masterminded a smuggling operation of staggering scale. The plan was to move contraband worth an incredible 8.5 billion Hong Kong dollars. It was a perfect plan, a ghost operation that should have left no trace. The potential profit was enough to change the balance of power in the city. Fat Kai and his crew felt the electric thrill of a heist that would become legend. But legends are often written in blood and betrayal. Within his own crew was a man named Taoist Chui, another member of the Wo On Lok, whose loyalty was cheaper than the goods they were moving. He turned informant, becoming the sole witness who could unravel the entire scheme. The operation collapsed in a spectacular failure. The authorities moved in, the cargo was seized, and the dream of a legendary payday vanished. Yet, in the aftermath, something strange happened. While the organization reeled from the loss, Fat Kai walked away without a single charge against him. He emerged from the wreckage of his own plan not only free, but with his reputation enhanced. In the twisted logic of the underworld, to aim so high and survive the fall was a mark of incredible skill and connections. Meanwhile, Taoist Chui, the man who had betrayed them, fled the country. It wasn't long before his body was pulled from the sea, a clear and brutal message from Tall Pao that disloyalty was a debt paid with one's life. The incident taught Fat Kai a valuable lesson. Failure could be survived, but betrayal was a death sentence. Though he had proven his nerve, Fat Kai began to feel a ceiling pressing down on him. He watched as Tall Pao promoted other men he considered less capable and less deserving. They were sycophants, loyal dogs who would never question an order. Fat Kai, with his quick mind and restless ambition, was seen not as an asset, but as a potential threat. Tall Pao needed followers, not future rivals. The old boss wanted to keep a tight grip on his power, and he understood that a man as clever as Fat Kai was not easily controlled. Fat Kai was put on ice. His contributions overlooked, his path to the top effectively blocked. A bitter resentment began to smolder within him. He had risked everything for the organization, yet his reward was to be kept in a gilded cage. It was during this dark period of frustration that a new light appeared on the horizon. A rival faction was rising within the Wo On Lok, a group of younger, more progressive members who chafed under Tall Pao's iron-fisted traditionalist rule. Their leader was a charismatic figure named Yip-tsz. He saw the future not in old hierarchies but in new opportunities. He recognized the talent that Tall Pao was foolishly wasting and saw in Fat Kai the perfect weapon to use against the old guard. Yip-tsz arranged a meeting. In a quiet, smoke-filled room, he laid out a vision for a new kind of Triad, one where talent and success were the only currencies that mattered. He offered Fat Kai the one thing Tall Pa never would, a stage on which he could freely perform, and a promise that if he delivered, he would be elevated to the highest levels of leadership. It was a tempting offer, a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. Fat Kai knew that accepting it meant committing the ultimate sin of betraying his boss, the man who had brought him into the life. But the desire for the power he felt he deserved was stronger than any lingering loyalty. He made his choice. He would leave Tall Pa and join the ranks of the Young Guns. His defection was a shockwave, but it came with a heavy burden of suspicion. To the members of Yip-tz's crew, he was still one of the Tall Pa's men, a potential mole sent to destroy them from within. In the ancient traditions of the Triads, a defector had to prove his loyalty with a pledge, an act so decisive and brutal that it would sever all ties to the past. He had to provide a head, a symbolic offering to his new masters. Yip-tz and his followers knew that the greatest obstacle to their ambitions was Tall Pa himself. They needed to know if Fat Kai was truly one of them, and there was only one way to find out. They needed to see if he had the stomach to take down his old mentor. In 2012, Fat Kai planned his offering. He learned that Tall Pa, a devoted dog lover, would be attending a pet exhibition in Wan Chai with his family. It was a public place, a perfect stage for a statement. Fat Kai gathered a dozen of his most ruthless men and laid a trap. As Tall Pa, leaning on a cane, walked toward the restroom alone, the trap was sprung. The men swarmed him, a whirlwind of fists and feet. The old boss was beaten to the ground, the sounds of the attack echoing through the hall. One of the attackers, in a frenzy of violence, grabbed a plastic wet floor sign and beat Tall Pa with it until it shattered into pieces. The brutal assault was a message delivered with vicious clarity. Fat Kai had made his pledge of allegiance not with a whisper, but with a roar of violence that would echo through the underworld for years to come. He had burned his bridges, and there was no turning back. The news of the attack on Tall Pa sent shockwaves through the city, but the old man himself played the part of a bewildered victim perfectly. From his hospital bed, he told the police he remembered nothing. He claimed he must have suffered a medical episode, a fall perhaps, and couldn't imagine who would want to harm him. His men, however, were not fooled. They saw the cold fury behind his vacant eyes. While Tall Pa feigned amnesia for the authorities, he was secretly plotting a response according to the underworld's unforgiving laws. He put out the word, activating a crew of his most vicious enforcers with a single, simple directive: find Fat Kai. Weeks later, Fat Kai was celebrating with his new comrades in a private room of a hot pot restaurant in Sham Shui Po. The mood was triumphant. They were toasting to a new era, to the fall of the old guard. But just as the celebration reached its peak, the door burst open. A group of men, their faces grim and their hands clutching choppers, stormed the room. Their target was clear. Fat Kai, for all his cunning, was not a street brawler. His mind was his primary weapon, and against the flashing steel of men sent to kill him, it was useless. He scrambled to escape, but the assassins were relentless. They hacked at him as he ran, slicing through muscle and bone. He collapsed on the street outside, bleeding from 7 deep wounds, a savage and precise retaliation. The message was clear: a debt had been collected. Fat Kai survived barely. Lying in his own hospital bed, he became a symbol for the younger faction. He was no longer just a defector. He was a martyr who had shed blood for their cause. Yip-tz and another senior figure, a man called Old Ghost Quen, visited him, their presence a powerful statement of solidarity. They saw the bandages and the stitches not as signs of weakness, but as a badge of honor. This shared violence forged a bond stronger than any promise. The attack had been meant to end him, but instead it cemented his place at the heart of the rebellion. 3 years later, in 2015, just before Yip-tsz was sent to prison on other charges, he made good on his word. With the full backing of the faction he had bled for, Fat Kai was made a dragonhead a leader. He had reached the top his throne built on betrayal and paid for with his own flesh. To understand the ferocious hatred that fueled this war, one had to understand the man who had been so savagely challenged. Tall Pao, born Chu Yuk-fat, was not a product of poverty. He grew up in a well-off family in a Hong Kong where street violence was a part of life. His parents, seeking to protect their son, enrolled him in martial arts classes. It was a practical decision meant to give him the tools to defend himself, but the training unlocked something within him. Combined with his natural height, which made him tower over other boys his age, his skills in combat made him a formidable presence. He was not just learning to protect himself, he was learning to dominate. As a young man, he was drawn to the power and structure of the Triads. He joined a gang known as the Shui Fong, which was the street name for the powerful Wo On Lok organization. There, his size and fighting prowess caught the attention of its legendary leader, a man known as Fairy Cam. Fairy Cam was the architect of the gang's modern empire, and he saw in the young imposing Chu Yuk-fat the perfect enforcer. He took him under his wing, and soon the underworld began to know Chu Yuk-fat by his nickname, Tall Pao. Under Fairy Cam's mentorship, Tall Pao's reputation grew. He became the gang's top fighter, the man sent to solve problems that words could not. When his mentor eventually stepped back from day-to-day operations, it was Tall Pao who seamlessly took control. His influence was absolute, extending far beyond street-level crime. An incident involving the famous martial arts actor Donnie Yen proved just how far his reach went. The story goes that Donnie Yen was at a bar with his girlfriend when one of Tall Pao's underlings began to harass her. The movie star, a master of Wing Chun, quickly and efficiently beat the man to the ground. But the gangster simply called for backup, and within minutes the actor was surrounded by more than a dozen Triad members. This was not a movie set. A street fight would have been suicidal. Word got back to Tall Pao that his gang had been disrespected. Soon after, Donnie Yen was made to understand that an apology was required. He had to host a lavish banquet for Tall Pao, not only to say he was sorry, but also to present a large sum of money as a token of his respect. Only then was the matter considered closed. The incident became a legend, a testament to the fact that in Hong Kong, even a famous action hero had to bow to the real power of a man like Tall Pao. The deep rift in the Wo On Lok Triad finally fractured the organization completely. Tall Pao's refusal to share power or cede control forced Yip-tsz and his followers to make a drastic move. They declared their independence, effectively splitting the gang into two warring camps. On one side were the traditionalists loyal to Tall Pao and his old-school ways. On the other were the Young Guns, a modern faction led by Yip-tsz and represented by men like Fat Kai. The declaration turned the Cold War hot. Hong Kong's streets became a chessboard for their violent conflict. Ambushes became common, and revenge attacks were a matter of routine. For years, the two factions bled each other, fighting a war of attrition where victory was measured in hospital bills and funeral costs. The conflict was a brutal stalemate, a cycle of violence with no end in sight. Time passed, and the landscape of power shifted once again, not with a bang, but with a quiet passing. The younger factions respected elder Old Ghost Kuan. A man who served as their spiritual pillar and seasoned advisor died from a common cold. His death from such a mundane ailment felt like a cruel joke, but the consequences were serious. He had been a stabilizing force, a figure whose reputation afforded the Young Guns a level of protection and legitimacy. With him gone, their faction was weakened, left vulnerable. It was an opportunity that a patient predator like Tall Pao would not ignore. He sensed weakness, a chance to finally settle old scores and reassert his dominance. For Fat Kai, the man who sat on the throne his betrayal had earned him life, had become a prison of paranoia. Years after the first attempt on his life, the fear had never truly faded. One night, after a late meal in Kowloon Bay, he walked toward his car. The street was quiet, shrouded in the heavy darkness of the late hour. Suddenly, a black sedan screeched out from a side street, its engine roaring, as it cut him off headlights, pinning him like a startled animal. 3 masked men leaped out, each brandishing a chopper that glinted under the streetlights. The terror was immediate and familiar. 10 years had passed since the first ambush, and the chilling memory flooded back. He turned to run, but his body betrayed him. He was not the young man he once was. The desperate sprint he needed was gone, replaced by the heavy legs of a middle-aged man. He didn't get far before the assassins were on him. They hacked at him with vicious, impersonal efficiency, and he collapsed to the pavement. He tried to crawl to pull himself away, his will to live screaming louder than the pain. But there was no escape this time. The street was deserted, with no witnesses and no one to help. The men stood over him, raining down blows with their blades until he stopped moving. They got back in their car and vanished into the night as quickly as they had appeared, leaving him to die in a growing pool of his own blood. It was only by a stroke of pure chance that a passing taxi driver spotted his body and rushed him to the hospital. He survived, but the message was undeniable. His crown offered no protection. Lying in a hospital bed for the second time, the reality of his life came into sharp focus. He had achieved the power he had craved, the position he had betrayed his mentor for, but it was a hollow victory. His title of Dragonhead was just a name that made him a bigger target. He lived not as a king, but as a hunted man, constantly looking over his shoulder, waiting for the next blade, the next car, the next attack. The loyalty of his new brothers was a fragile shield, and the hatred of his old ones was a promise of unending violence. His life was a testament to the fundamental lie of the underworld. The promise of brotherhood was a mask for ruthless self-interest, and the pursuit of power was a road that led only to a life of fear. The gangster's path was, as the old saying went, a road of no return, a journey that could only end in a hospital bed, a prison cell, or a shallow grave. The blood he had spilled to climb the ladder had only made it slippery for his own descent. Fat Kai's story is a chilling reminder that a throne built on betrayal is a lonely and dangerous seat. He gained the power he craved, but in doing so he sentenced himself to a life of perpetual fear, forever looking over his shoulder for the next blade. His tale illustrates the grim reality of the gangster's path, a road that promises brotherhood and glory, but delivers only paranoia and bloodshed. The cycle of violence he started by attacking his mentor ultimately consumed him, proving that in the end, the underworld always claims its own.